Good afternoon. I'd like to call this fifth meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology to order. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Senator Girdler, Senator Carr, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills,
Here in person.
Senator Southworth, Senator Storm, Senator Thomas, Senator Wheeler,
Present in the room.
Senator Wilson, Senator Yates.
Present via Zoom from district.
Thank you. Representative Baker,
In person.
Representative Beckler, Representative Bojanowski.
Present from District 32.
Thank you. Representative Branscombe,
Present in the room.
Representative Brown, Representative Callaway,
Here in the room.
Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Representative Dotson, Representative Pfister,
Present in the room.
Representative Frazier,
Present in the room.
Representative Freeland,
Present in the room.
Representative Fugit,
Present in the room.
Representative Gooch, Representative Hale, Representative Heath, Representative Huff, Representative Kirk McCormick, Representative Koenig, Representative Lawrence, Representative Miller, Representative Palumbo, Representative Raymond, Representative Reed,
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts,
Here in the room.
Representative Rowland, Representative Sheldon.
Present from district.
Thank you. Representative Stevenson,
Here in the room.
Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Tate.
Present from my district.
Thank you. Representative Timoney,
Here in the room.
Representative Wesley, Representative White.
Present, Matt Sterling.
Thank you. Co-Chair Schroeder.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Co-Chair King.
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Pratt.
Okay, it appears we have a quorum. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting?
Shit.
Okay, we have a motion. Second?
Second.
All right, minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, this is Representative Hale. I'm joining by remote today.
Okay, good to see you, Representative. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Representative Lawrence. I'm in district remotely.
All right, and I see Representative Heath walking in, so there we.
Mr. Chairman, this is Representative Beckler. I'm present remotely.
All right. Thank you, Representative Beckler. Anyone else? I saw Senator Southworth. So, okay. Well, we have a fairly full agenda, so I guess first we have a discussion of Airbnb and VRBO. So, if those representatives would please approach the table, and the floor is yours. Please identify yourself for the record.
It helps if I turn it on. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Kirkpatrick. I'm the president of MEDA NKY, which is Northern Kentucky Tourism. And I am here today to talk to you a little bit about Airbnb and VRBO in this state. I really appreciate you allowing us time today to do a little bit of education, talk a little bit about a problem that exists in this state. I'm a board member of the Kentucky Tourism Industry Association. I am also a proud member of the Kentucky Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus, and I think they're going to speak after me. But I'm also a traveler, and I think a lot of people in this room are travelers as well. And when we travel, we look for unique destinations to visit. We look for unique ways to stay. In the state of Kentucky, we have a lot of wonderful hotels. We have a lot of wonderful state parks. We also have a lot of Airbnb and VRBOs. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about this shared economy industry and ask you to help us to address an inequality that exists in this state. And I've got a lot of data, so I promise not to geek out too much as I do this. So if you don't know, the shared economy industry is one where an individual shares maybe their home, an apartment, a room in their house, maybe their car, and they gain a financial benefit from that. Maybe you've taken a vacation in the past and you've rented a vacation home. Maybe you've used Airbnb and VRBO. I think a lot of people have. The industry really took off in 2013 and 2014 with the introduction of these technology platforms that made it very easy for people to rent a room, rent a house, take a vacation very easily. When this started, we thought it was a bit of a disruption, just like we didn't think people were going to want to ride around in people's cars. Well, we got proved wrong. Uber and Lyft are very, very popular today. So, they're mainstream and they are big, big economic generators in the state of Kentucky. I have data that shows through the first 9 months of this year, January through September, $157 million worth of transactions happened in Airbnb and VRBOs. It's big business. They have big revenue share. VRBO also shelves a lot of their accommodations on Expedia. So if you are looking for somewhere to stay in the state of Kentucky and you're looking on Expedia, you will see these VRBO rentals. The reason that I'm here today is to talk about the inequality with these platforms and their obligation to pay the transient occupancy tax in the state. There are a couple of destinations in the state of Kentucky. Northern Kentucky is one of them, Lexington, Louisville, and Bowling Green, that Airbnb has agreements to pay the local transient tax. That allows us to do marketing to bring new visitors to the state of Kentucky. The state Department of Tourism also receives the 1% tax that they are due to market the state of Kentucky from Airbnb. But that does nothing for the rest of this Commonwealth. And there are a lot of destinations in this state, tourism industry organizations that are not receiving their fair share from Airbnb or VRBO. Now, the property owners absolutely pay their property taxes on these houses and apartments and rooms to the municipality where they live. And I believe the property owners want to be in compliance with paying these taxes. These are not new taxes. They are on the books in every county and every city in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But I believe the responsibility is on these platforms to ensure that they are remitting the taxes that are due to the tourism organizations. We also know that Airbnb and VRBO do not want to go they don't want to go county by county, city by city doing agreements. They've made that very clear to the industry across the country. Tennessee had the exact same problem that we have in Kentucky. They had agreements in Nashville, they had agreements in Gatlinburg, but there were Airbnbs all over the state of Tennessee. And Airbnb and VRBO had no interest in doing one-off agreements. Tennessee created legislation in 2020 that centralized the collection of these taxes across the entire state and remitted those to the destination. I know it's not a perfect model. I know there are some problems with centralized collection, but it is a smart way for us to level the playing field. This Tennessee model, it is a solution to ensure there's equity of collections across the state. The centralized collection agency will take a small amount as a processing fee, but it simplifies what could be a very difficult process for a lot of tourism organizations across the state of Kentucky. A lot of these are small organizations, 1 person, 2 person, 3 persons. They don't have time and maybe don't even have the knowledge to have a full list and work with homeowners to ensure. I don't think the cities have the time and the counties have the time. But the platforms are being paid. They should be held accountable for this. Now, some of you may be wondering why an organization that already receives money from Airbnb might be here today talking about that. I don't think it's fair, first of all. I think that these platforms should charge their visitors and should give it back to the tourism organizations. I also know that we in tourism, we live our state motto. We are united, we stand. Divided, we fall. What's good for us is good for everyone across the state of Kentucky as we work to repair this industry after what COVID has done for it. Northern Kentucky, we've lost $700 million during COVID of economic impact, and we work every day to restore that impact. We also work to restore the jobs. We've lost 5,000 jobs in Northern Kentucky. That is what keeps me up at night, getting people back to work. We want to not just recover from where we were when COVID started, we want to recover to where we should be once COVID is over. We need marketing funds to do this. I did some basic research on Airbnb in the state of Kentucky with a company called AirDNA. I looked at a couple of destinations that don't receive their fair share, and I want to share some of those stories with you today. Directly to the south of Northern Kentucky is a wonderful town called Williamstown. The Ark Encounter is based in Williamstown. And if you know anything about the Ark Encounter, when it opened in 2017, it started to bring in hundreds of thousands of visitors to our state. Williamstown went from 0 Airbnbs to 75 Airbnbs that are in operation in just Williamstown today. I talked to my good friend Jamie Baker, who runs tourism in Grant County. If she was able to collect the taxes on that, it would be a 50% increase in her marketing budget. That's transformative. Stanton in Red River Gorge has in operation 183 Airbnbs. That would be an increase to their marketing budget of about $120,000. That would help them bring in even more visitors. As we do a better and more effective job in marketing and bringing in new visitors, I can tell you these offerings are going to continue to grow. Bardstown, Kentucky, with my good friend Samantha Brady, who runs tourism there, has seen a 103% increase in Airbnbs in that destination. There aren't a whole lot of hotels throughout the state of Kentucky, but there are a lot of unique places. So these Airbnbs offer visitors a chance to spend more time and leave their money behind in the community. That would be an increase of almost $45,000 a year to Bardstown's marketing budget. And that is also transformative for them to bring in new visitors. I've got data from Paducah, from Frankfort, right here in the capital, from Owensboro, Pikeville, across the state of Kentucky. All of these are continuing to grow. Now, I do also want you to know I spent 20 years in the hotel industry. And I believe that every hotel absolutely pays the occupancy taxes that they collect from the visitors. I believe that Airbnb and VRBO should also do that in the state of Kentucky. VRBO does not pay anyone in the state of Kentucky. They do not pay us. They do not pay Lexington. They do not pay Louisville. They do not collect this tax that is on the books. Again, this is not a new tax. I do believe that these are good technology platforms. They continue to bring in new visitors. I even look at somewhere like this, like Louisville. My good friend Cleo Battle. Louisville is hosting one of the biggest trade shows that they've hosted since before COVID. It's bringing in more than 4,000 visitors. That fills up a lot of hotel rooms. Would that push out visitors that wouldn't normally visit Louisville if those Airbnbs were not available? And it's also pushing visitors into Shelbyville, into Oldham County. It's keeping them here longer. So I do believe that these are good platforms, and I'm happy that we are able to bring more and more visitors into the state. Again, we have shared the Tennessee legislation with Chairman Schroeder. We are, as an industry, going to ask our legislators to help us fix this problem with this Tennessee model, and I'm happy to share this legislation with anyone that would want to see it as we ask you to help us build back this industry. And above all, thank you for what you do. Thank you for how you've stepped in to help us during this time. And please help us bring more visitors to the state of Kentucky. I may not have all the answers if you have questions, but I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from Co-Chair King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Julie, for being here today. I was so glad to see this on our agenda today. I have had the tourism commissions in my district bring this to me for the last several years, so I sincerely appreciate you bringing it up. And just as you mentioned, it is Ours and our district are a volunteer board anyway. They don't have the extra time to go out and try to research if there are new residences, facilities that are coming in and out of this process. So I think a centralized way of collecting a tax that is already due makes perfect sense. If you could forward that bill draft to me, I can give you my email address. That would be wonderful. I'd like to look over the exact language. The $150 million that you mentioned for 2021, that is Kentucky only.
That is only the state of Kentucky.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because obviously that's a very large number. And in case any of our observers or listeners thought that might be nationwide, I was thinking that was probably Kentucky only.
It is. Airbnb overall in the United States of America is about a $23 billion industry.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Co-Chair King. Question just for my own edification. I mean,
yes, sir.
You mentioned that, and you do hear this from folks, we pay our property taxes to the city and the communities that we live in. Do hotels also pay a property tax as well?
Yes, sir. Hotels, when they are built, they pay city taxes. They also pay property taxes, and they are escalated property taxes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. We have a question from Representative Beckler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julie, I would assume that the owners of these Airbnb, et cetera, places pay income tax. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. I believe so, and I will verify that.
Yeah, I would be very interested in seeing the income tax that they pay versus what you're suggesting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I don't think we have any further questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Kirkpatrick, for your testimony today.
Have a wonderful day.
Okay, next we have the Kentucky Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus. If you'll please approach the table and turn your microphones on before you begin. You could please identify yourself, too, for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Erin Carrico, and I'm the Executive Director in Murray, Kentucky. I'm also currently the President of the Kentucky Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus. I'd like to thank you all today for allowing us to come in today and have the opportunity to speak to you about where we are right now and how we really need to move forward. I also have some good tourism friends with me. To my right, I have Vice President Jeanette Marzen. She is also the Executive Director at Lake Cumberland. And then over here to my other side is Executive Director Brandon Pennington from Harlan. And what I'm going to each have them do, I've given you a piece of paper, but this is really the focus of this piece of paper is just the nuts and bolts to background of what's happening to us right now. And so I'm not really going to focus what's on here. What I really want to focus on is sharing with you the stories and the situations that many of us are finding ourselves in. As you all know, because you all represent different parts of Kentucky, many of us, while all in our CVBs, we have different things that we need to focus on, and we are of different sizes. At the end of the day, we're struggling with funding problems. We're struggling being able to move forward. We may have scathed through COVID and our offices are still open, but many of us have lost more than half our budget. We've lost staff members and we cannot move from where we're standing. So Brandon, if you want to share a few things of what's happening in Eastern Kentucky.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again for having us here today. My name is Brandon Pennington with Harlan Tourism. And today I wanted to just bring a little bit of information about what is going on in southeastern Kentucky. Specifically, I've reached out to some of my peers within the industry and in our area, and the situation is kind of similar across the board in terms of southeastern Kentucky. We appear to be doing well. A lot of our communities are smaller, therefore we have restaurant tax, and so we've kind of had a little bit of safety net through COVID. But what that story doesn't show is that during the first part of COVID and shutdowns during 2020, that many of our peers had to dip into the reserves just to make it through 2020. 2021, lodging is going up, and specifically for that reasoning is because we have visitors. We have a huge influx of visitors wanting to go to places where they can be socially distanced and safe. And so we've seen a huge increase of visitors to our area. In fact, I've had the best lodging numbers that I have ever had in the last probably 3 months of this year. But what that does is also show us some of our weaknesses where we need a little bit of help. One of my industry peers from Corbin, Maggie Manholland, was telling me that she has such an influx of visitors that she cannot keep brochures on the shelves. But where she had to dip into her reserves, she doesn't have money to reprint her brochures right now. Now, that's a great problem to have, is that we have all those visitors, but it's a terrible problem to have that we can't reprint the brochures and have them up to date. Not only are we experiencing problems with that, we're experiencing problems with infrastructure, with signage, with trailheads that need maintenance, trails that need maintenance. It's really become an issue that these weaknesses have been exposed during this part of COVID. One of the things that I've kind of realized after speaking with John Grace in Bell County is that we have Boone's Ridge Wildlife Center, which I'm sure that many of the community is aware of, opening in early 2023. And this is about a $40 million project that's going to change the entire region of southeastern Kentucky. But the ancillary support that we would typically receive for something like that, for all of our small communities to promote it, we don't have the funding to do that right now. But I can tell you who does have funding to do that right now. There are small communities right outside of Bell County in Tennessee that will be receiving ARPA funds. They'll be receiving that money, and they'll be receiving the economic impact because they'll have the money to promote it, to put the signage up, to attract visitors to their area. And we don't want to see that. We don't want to see those visitors go to Tennessee. We want to keep them here in Kentucky, especially southeastern Kentucky. I was talking over lunch about it, and it's one of those things that if you imagine opening up the Ark Encounter but not having the support that the small CVBs around it have been able to do to promote it, that would be the same situation that would be going on with Boone's Ridge in 2023. And of course, Boone's Ridge, I say that it's going to change our region, and it absolutely will. Just to throw out some figures about it, we're expecting 990,000 visitors with Boone Ridge. It's going to be a $202 million economic impact for the region. It's supposed to spark 3,300 new jobs. We don't want to lose that, and we want to make sure that we can support that project to the best of our ability. And so we're asking for just a little bit of support with that.
Thank you. Jeanette, can you kind of talk about what's happening in your region?
Absolutely. Greetings from Southern Kentucky. I am from Russell County, Lake Cumberland Tourist Commission, but I'm speaking for all of Southern Kentucky. Of course, Southern Kentucky is bursting with tourism as far as the lakes. We have Lake Cumberland. We have Dale Hollow Lake, we have Green River Lake, and a smattering of other small lakes. Of course, houseboating is huge. And I definitely think, and according to research, there are more tourism jobs in Southern Kentucky than anything else. A lot of the people that work in tourism may not have a full-time job, but they have a seasonal job. They work at the marinas, the state park, and it feeds their family. In Southern Kentucky, we're a mix of very small businesses and some larger marinas as well. And also 5 Kentucky state parks, which are very, very important to our economy as a whole in Kentucky. When COVID hit, and we are small. Everything we have in Southern Kentucky is small. I think our largest city is Somerset, but in a world view, they are a small city as well. When COVID hit, it was disastrous for the economy. I always like to say that tourism, no matter where you are, big city or small city, it touches every single facet of every business. When COVID hit, our state parks, some of them closed, devastating, both in Southern Kentucky and in Western Kentucky as well. I think those were the largest state parks. Big shout out to Representative Branscombe. And I so appreciate all of you all that let us call you and say, help us, please. And he did. And our good friend, Senator Max Wise as well, helped get those parks back open. But that was after the second shutdown due to this crazy pandemic, that we're in the middle of. But in addition to the state parks being completely shut down, travel had stopped. Julie was talking about Airbnbs, which we have several in Russell County. And when travel is stopped, and you think of small business and how it affects them, some of these Airbnbs had no business, so they weren't taking their drop-off laundry to the little tiny mom-and-pop laundromat down the street. It affects everything. When the small businesses are jumping out of their lodging business, the insurance companies, are not making the extra money from what it costs for Airbnb or VRBO to run. But it affects every single facet of tourism. And then also, I like to mention that the CVBs, especially in small communities, we are the backbone for marketing and promotion for these small businesses. And if we don't have the funds to promote, those small businesses are really truly affected. In Russell County, we are, well, in Southern Kentucky as a whole, we are not a wealthy community, especially not in Russell County. These small businesses absolutely depend on travelers, and of course they're coming to Lake Cumberland or Dale Hollow or Green River Lake. That's our hook, but we want them to shop in our stores, go to our restaurants, and we need marketing money to be able to tell our story fully. We, as Brandon had said, we've got a lot of visitors now coming. It's good to be small. It's good to have big, wide open spaces and a lot of outdoor adventure. But we are pulling ourselves literally out of a financial hole. I do not think very many, if any, of the CVBs in Southern Kentucky had a reserve. We are all on very slim budgets, so COVID hits and we are just hanging on by the fingernails. And doing everything just to stay alive. So now we are desperate, in need to bring additional people to the entire state of Kentucky, get that outside money flowing in, and we need definitely the marketing dollars to do it. Some new things in Kentucky, probably you've heard the $200 million project in Pulaski County. Horse Soldier Bourbon is huge. Of course, we all work together. We are not competitors in any way. Tennessee and those are competitors, but we work together. But we need the marketing, in our region, the marketing dollars to be able to promote that very exciting project. In Russell County, I've heard in the spring, one of our marinas is expanding to yacht charters, which that's big for Kentucky as a whole, because I don't think that's a thing yet. So, but to be able to promote that and to bring additional people in, maybe that were going to Florida for their yacht charter, can now, in the spring, come to Kentucky. But as Representative Branscombe, as we sent out a holler help, we're sending out another one, definitely.
Okay. Thank you, Jeanette. So another piece of this puzzle is that, just as Julie said, it takes all of us, big or small, east or west. It does not matter. So there's another piece of the industry that has been absolutely devastated by COVID and will be very slow to recover, and that's the meetings and conventions, which primarily focuses on Louisville, Lexington, and the northern Kentucky area. They are massively struggling. That is a big piece of their tourism puzzle. And right now they don't have the means, again, to propel forward. And they are looking beyond the year that we are working in now. They're looking at trying to reel in and how meetings work and conventions work is they're working for 2023 and beyond. But right now they don't have the money for site visits. They don't have the money to recruit. They don't even have the money to travel to a travel planning session if there is one. And just a prime example, a few little figures specifically for Lexington, in March of 2019 to March of 2020, just the hotel revenue alone was $120 million that was lost. And it's going to take a long time to get to the place where we can have those come back again. It takes a lot of money. Just $10,000 in spending money of recruiting a meeting planner to Lexington or Louisville will equate easily to $3 million economic impact. Just one meetings or conference, $3 million into a community. So again, just because we are from smaller communities doesn't mean that we don't need to support and acknowledge how the whole piece of tourism works together.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Senator Thomas.
Aaron, you probably know that in my past life, I served on the Visit Let's board for about 5 years and was the financial chairman of that board. So the Convention Visitors Bureau is something that's very near and dear to my heart in tourism. I got an idea for you. I've been thinking about this because I've heard from many of my friends who visit me and from friends of friends who I talk to how much they enjoy visiting the thoroughbred farms and the Bourbon Trail. They are just really thrilled by those visits. With the bringing on of the Ford plant in Hardin County, I'd like for you to consider maybe in 4 or 5 years having an automobile trail as well with Toyota in Scott County, with the Ford plant in Louisville, with the oncoming electric battery and truck plant in Hardin County, and then the Corvette plant down that 65 corridor in Bowling Green. I think that's the next trail that Kentucky ought to develop. So it's not really a question, but it is a suggestion. And I'd encourage you to give some thought to that.
Will do.
Over the next 3 to 4 years.
And that's actually an excellent idea. So we talk a lot about, one of the things that we've all noticed when we talk amongst ourselves is that pre-COVID to where we are now, our visitor profile in all of our destinations has changed immensely. We have different types of people walking in our doors and different types of people in our community, but we have no sense of why. And so that's another piece of our funding that we're needing is research to figure out how do we reach those car enthusiasts? Bowling Green has a good step hold to that, and they would be a great anchor. But how do we pull them in? Where are they coming from, and what attracts them to us? But that's an excellent idea that adds to. We do trails very well here. That's a very strong. That's a strong place for us to be. We do trails very well because we are very much a drivable state, and you can see all sorts of different. You can see mountains, you can see cornfields, you can see tobacco, and you can also see a big city. So that's an excellent suggestion. I really like that.
I do too.
Okay, Co-Chair King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. I have a twofold question, if I may. So the funding request is $75 million based on your paper. So are we similar to Louisiana and Mississippi? I mean, I guess I'm asking, how did we arrive at $75 million? And then the second part of my question is, how do you propose, if this request is granted, how would that be distributed across the Commonwealth based on gross receipts from 2019 or what do you see? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Right. So to address the first part of your question, if you look at the funding of the other states that I gave you, Louisiana was specifically put up there because they have the same current political makeup that we do. So it's a very similar situation for their state. Obviously, Tennessee is a little alarming, especially, no for the three of us, Tennessee. All three of us sit on the border of Tennessee. And so that's very scary for us as far as what they're going to be able to do ahead of the curve. So that's why they are listed. But Louisiana specifically, that's where that number came from. $75 million is just an estimated cost. We felt that we could easily divide those funds between, when I talked about meetings and conventions area, also to the KDT office, who sends things out internationally and nationally, especially for small CVBs. We don't have the funds to reach that far. And then another piece of that pie would get funneled down directly to DMOs, directly to our offices. And again, that could meet anything as promotions. A lot of us have signage issues. Some of us really need to give some grant and some type of grant for our local attractions that are really suffering, that are small scale compared to, let's say, Newport Aquarium. All of those things, research, all of that is very important for us to be able to build our house back up. And so that's how those funds would be divvied kind of into those three segments, if that makes sense. And then as far as accountability and how those funds would be shifted out, possibly through, hopefully through the KDT office, we lend ourselves to their expertise. We already have mechanisms in place for our matching funds, our tourism incentive program that we already know how to do. We have contracts already set with the state to receive funds. Also, due to our statutes, we are SPGEs. We have many rules that we must follow for transparency, which I think just furthers that the money will be used properly and it will be put into the right place. Thank you.
Southworth.
Well, I'm going to second Senator Thomas's motion, and I have a question for you relating to the auto trail that ends at the Corvette factory. And the Corvette factory, do you all have conversations with that group down there and find out when they're going to get that thing open again? Because I was supposed to go 2 years ago and they were closed down, and then the pandemic hit and they're still closed down. And I checked last week, they're still closed down. And I'm still waiting to get back to see my 2020 and now 2 Corvette.
Yes. It's a really great tour. It's a really great place to be. Yes. So the Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau works very closely with them, as well as the Corvette Museum. They understand the need as to what tourists fit into the big piece of what that facility means as far as bringing in visitors. And I think it has to do with COVID protocols, and hopefully in the next year we'll be able to see tours open back up again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you all.
And we look forward to working with you in the upcoming session. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, we have the Kentucky Restaurant Association and the Kentucky Retail Federation with the COVID-19 recovery update. So if Ms. Roof and Ms. Stieglitz would come to the table and introduce yourselves and turn on your mics, we'll get going.
There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Stieglitz. I am the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs with the Kentucky Retail Federation.
And I'm Stacy Roof. Stacy Roof with the Kentucky Restaurant Association. Thank you all for having us today.
Yes, we are so grateful to be here. We were asked to present on how is our 2 industries recovering. And just so you understand, we work very closely with the Restaurant Association. They're affiliated with the Retail Federation for the purpose of government affairs. So we do work on their legislative issues for them. So just to get started, here's a few of the things we're going to go over. I wanted to bring out a little bit about the impact of what, especially some of our major chain members, I think that a lot of times we don't see their full impact and what they have located here in Kentucky and what they've done. We have lots of our members who have distribution facilities here, manufacturing facilities here, and of course there are numerous retail locations. Additionally, many of those members set up free testing programs for COVID-19. They are deploying vaccinations. They are quickly becoming a very easily accessible and healthcare site that many, many customers want to continue to utilize in that manner. We've had the benefit of some federal flexibilities that Kentucky has taken advantage of to continue those efforts. But, just a few of the things, I think it's always important to remember we have lots of folks who donate food. Kroger donated, I just happen to have theirs on hand, $1.7 million. Additionally, they have a program where they allow food banks to come directly to their locations to take food that may be on the verge of timing out of when it can be sold to the customer, and so that food bank will take it and take advantage of that. It's been a very successful program. Provided paid leave to give vaccinations, provided transportation to vaccination appointments, and then actually in Stacy's organization worked with pharmacies to hold vaccination clinics at actual restaurants. So when the vaccine rollout was coming, so that we can ensure that those employees could get access to it if they so choose. And So here are some statistics. These are national restaurant statistics. I think that the most critical thing to understand is that the restaurant industry is still not back prior to how it was going before COVID-19. And in Kentucky, our restaurant industry was thriving. It is still an absolute pleasure to get to have such a variety of restaurants to choose from in the Commonwealth. And so we continue to want to push to get back to that place. But of course, there are still challenges that Stacy's members are facing. And nearly 4 in 5 restaurants are understaffed. And the lack of labor, the increased costs of labor, but also now the supply chain issues that both of our members are facing continues to add to the problems and challenges that our industries face. Do you want to add anything?
Sure. I would also say that, and you all have probably noticed this if you've gone out to eat or even gone through a drive-through to pick something up, the wait is longer, the hours are restricted, and we pass places all the time that you're looking at thinking, why aren't they open right now? Well, this is exactly why they're not open. They either don't have the staff to be open right that minute, or they chose to close that day when they would normally be to give other people.
Representative Pratt, I think if you could mute your microphone. Yeah.
They'll close for a day or even early, several days, just to give their folks a break and a chance to rest, because they don't want to burn out the people that they do have coming to work. So, we all see it every day, and it's kind of the new epidemic, really.
Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to say thank you for the legislation in 2020 that you did pass that very much benefited our industries. The legal liability reforms that the General Assembly has now passed twice to protect those, including retailers and restaurants, was critical for our industry, especially so that we could we just grew and adapted and changed. We were really flying by the seat of our pants as we tried to understand what it was we were facing and how we were going to attack it. With that being said, the cocktails to go for restaurants, that was such a wonderful thing that the General Assembly gave temporary permission for. And going back to 2020, if you remember the end of the session, you did do that. And then making it permanent, just so wonderful, as was the raw groceries, the tax changes regarding small business loans that we were so dependent upon to get through COVID-19. We truly appreciate that change. It was just critical to get that through. So we appreciate those and say thank you. So we wanted to talk about, so what are our current challenges? We are continuing to move along, but there are absolutely current challenges. I think that we all know that supply chain issues, you may have noticed, and you'll see later here, the Kentucky Retail Federation is urging you to shop early for the holidays. Please, 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 we want you to be able to get, I don't know what the in toy is this time. Maybe it's the Xbox X or the PlayStation or whatever, but we want you to be able to get that for your families. And so shop early. It does appear, given our national surveys, that customers are going to do that. Labor continues to be a struggle, increased cost of things, inflation, and then, just the unknowns with the virus and how we're going to manage those things. So we'll talk about a little bit about those each. This, I love this picture. I think it's a really cool picture. But this is a picture from the LA Times of, you can see the ships out waiting to come to port. Yesterday, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order to allow public lands or like public parks or places on the coast to allow these ships to come into port at those places so that they could try and alleviate this backlog. So I know that President Biden has made some argument or changes to argue to get those ports to open 24 hours a day. But, this is not a new problem for the retail industry. When this is something that the National Retail Federation has been trying to deal with for a number of years, but we are at a very high level of shipping problems right now. Tariffs don't help that issue either, going the other way. And so this is not a new issue to the retail industry. It's just now all of our consumers are experiencing the pains. So again, we're encouraging you to shop early, shop often. We want to make sure that, but we do think that that customers are still not going to spend for that holiday spending at where they were spending prior to the pandemic. So that tells us that consumer confidence is just not quite back to where we would like to see it to be. So I hate this headline, but I wanted to pull this out. I thought this was an interesting article. But that the retail industry does seem to be responding to employees' demands for higher wages. And I just thought that this article, it's a Washington Post article, it talks about childcare workers leaving childcare facilities. Really, I understand the daycare industry and the hamstrings that they have on themselves. But, for that retail is responding and paying their employees more, I think is something that we're proud of. This is just a few of the things that we're trying to do and what you may see in the labor market. We do have retailers that have hit the $15 market. I know there are restaurants have done that as well. And then we see a lot of folks retiring early and deciding to go that route instead of staying in the marketplace. There is a new term. If you watched the Consensus Forecasting Group, I think that this term was brought out of ghost and coast. And if you're an employee, it's a pretty inventive strategy. So the idea is that you go and get trained on a skill, and then you ghost the employer that hired you and go to the other employers similarly situated in the industry and see who will give you the highest wage. So there is a lot of trying to take advantage of how to get the most out of the marketplace. Customers are frustrated at times, as Stacy has said. I think that we all recognize that just living through the global pandemic has raised our frustration level very high, our anxieties very high. I think that if you saw the stories about the Tennessee football game this past weekend, that's a demonstration of that. And managing customers is something that we do is very number one in our business. And so when employees have to deal with those customers' frustrations, it contributes to our labor issues. And just the things that, I don't know if you're a mom. I mean, my middle son, Drew, is devastated because he can't get Capri Sun lemonades. Gatorades are on short supply. My boys are big milk drinkers. Thank goodness we can still get that, although sometimes not the milk they prefer. And the packaging is where we're seeing a lot of shortages. So it's not just the raw products themselves, it's the actual packaging. Those costs are going up. And then transportation costs are going up as you have a shortage of drivers. And from some of the retail economists that I've read, they still believe that inflationary pressures will ease, that this is a temporary situation. It just seems to continue to be a challenge for our industry. So, other concerns is what will be the new variant. But also for our employees' perspective it is daycare, the cost of daycare, it is childcare, getting access to it. If you think about if you're an employee and you can have a consistent schedule and an office job, or you can have work in retail where your hours may vary, you have a marketplace right now that allows you to make those decisions. But our employees are trying to keep up with some of those costs as well. And so I'm going to let Stacy talk about what the other states have done and what restaurants are looking for. But we wanted to sort of talk to you about what's next. How can the General Assembly help us overcome some of those challenges?
Sure. I think that things are going to be rough for a while yet. You know, I never thought we'd be saying that a year ago. I thought we were, you know, in it for a few months, and I think everybody did, right? We thought we're America. We're going to soar through all this and put it behind us. With that said, I think going into 2022, we would hope that the main message that we have is do no harm. You know, try and just be careful about, and I know you always are, and thoughtful about legislation that will impact these businesses that are still reeling from last year. And you might see restaurants look very busy, but they're doing a fraction of what they would be able to do with the proper staffing and with the removal of the health concerns that people still have, you know, and now that we've lived through this Delta variant and we're continuing on, we know that other variants are possible. So it's different than it was when we were kind of coming out of that first round of COVID. We're going into winter. We're going to lose outdoor seating options, which all provide not only additional seating for the facilities, but also additional comfort levels for guests, right, that can choose those. And so those are scary factors. One of the things that we are hoping will make its way through the legislature is allowing people that are not yet 20 years old or older to be able to serve or handle alcohol in some ways in a restaurant setting. Right now, that's not the law, but in our neighboring states, that is the law. And as you know, Kentucky touches, I think, 7 other states. And so there are a lot of opportunities at those border areas for folks to look for better job opportunities. That would be a great, from our employer's perspective, a great way to bring in younger folks and train them and allow them to experience the tips that can be earned, which are a great supplement to that base rate. Also, we would hope that with those ARP dollars, as many of our other states have done, they would carve out some specific program for restaurant revenue loss to be able to award it to some of the restaurants that we have in Kentucky. And going into 2020, we were absolutely thriving. We had 7,700 plus restaurant locations in the state. We would love to be able to keep as many of those who have lived through this so far as we possibly can. So I thank you all for all the things that you've done over this past year and a half. And just going into 2022, hope that you continue the good work that you've started.
Oops.
Okay.
I just was going to, again, going back to just a couple things on the do no harm front. We continue to hear lots of discussions about allowing a constitutional amendment for local option sales taxes. That's a concern for both of us because of potential, you pay a sales tax on a restaurant meal. But, that constitutional change, I know there's a lot of discussion about it. It's just giving the General Assembly the authority to do what it wants to do. But there's also a long-term thought process that needs to be that. We're very comfortable and know that we can work with the General Assembly that we have today. But we don't know what the General Assembly will look like in 25 years, what their priorities could be. And so removing a constitutional provision of this nature does give us a lot of pause and concern. And it's not a lot of pause and concern for the fact that it will increase our costs. It's a fact that our consumers, our customers, are our constituents, and that we want them to have those dollars in their pocketbook. Property tax assessments, we've had legislation filed and recent decisions from the Board of Tax Appeals really targeting retail sector for property tax assessments based on how successful they are in the marketplace, based on who's most credit worthy. We think those things are how you pay those through income taxes. Property taxes in Kentucky constitutionally are to be uniform and a fair cash value. Restaurant taxes. We know that local governments want to all be able to do a restaurant tax, but we feel that now is not the time, especially as consumer confidence continues to be on shaky ground. And the fees, and more fees. I have to say, over the last year, while you've not been in session, I have spent more time working on increased food permit fees. Now we have increased fees from the transportation cabinets on the logo panel signs. It's going to more than double those fees to place a logo on that sign. And for one of my members, it's an increased cost of $30,000 for 1 year. And so those are the types of things that we're looking at. Alcohol sales, I don't think it's that, we appreciate cocktails to go, but the retail sector also wants to ensure that it can grow in its retailing ability. We've had a recent decision from the ABC that went from saying we could sell wine spritzers to saying we can't. And that's caused some frustration in the marketplace, particularly as other sectors of the alcohol industry seem to be growing and expanding, and we can't seem to fully retail. That's a frustration for our folks. The discussion of soda taxes, that causes us some concern, or any taxes specifically on a product. And then organized retail theft. This is something that has grown over the COVID-19 pandemic. If you've been monitoring it at all, you will see there will be huge warehouses that look like you're walking into a Home Depot warehouse, and you're not. You're walking into somebody's back building of a garage, and it's all things that have been stolen. And there are online marketplaces that make it easy to really get rid of these products. In just the last year, I think it's over 8 Walgreens in the city of San Francisco have closed because of the fact their felony threshold is $950. We've gone to $1,000. I will fully recognize our criminal justice system does not mirror theirs. I'm not arguing that at all. We do have aggregation, and I hope our county attorneys will take full advantage of that. That's in the law. But at the same time, it is becoming a national problem, and for the retail sector. And if you want to look at, there is a little video of gentlemen just walking into a store and walking out with big things, and no one's stopping them. And it's continuing to be a growing problem. And that's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Hey, Representative Branscombe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. We know the past year or two has been pretty tough on our restaurants, our retailers, and as well as our tourism, our previous presenters. And I've seen what Janette's done firsthand down in Lake Cumberland, in my home, and what she's done for tourism in our area. So I know it's been tough for everybody over the past couple of years, but we really appreciate everything you all do. But one of the questions I had, and it was on one of the previous slides, was about the alcohol being served for 18 years of age and older being able to serve. Is there a separation between someone being able to serve versus being a bartender?
No.
In any of the language that you've seen, I think you mentioned other states have had this same language.
In some states, there is a separation. A bartender may have to be older, but it's the minority of states, I believe.
Okay.
In the language that we've looked at right now, if you're under 20, you're not supposed to be involved in a transaction that has to do with alcohol, bussing tables, or delivering drinks and such. So if you are in a position to be able to serve food, and maybe you're at an establishment that doesn't sell a lot of alcohol, someone else that's over that age would have to bring that alcohol to the table.
Okay. I just didn't know if any of the language had differentiated between actual bartender who's making the drinks versus just a server who's bringing those out. So that was what I was getting at. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would follow up with maybe a little something I mentioned earlier when the chamber was giving their speech this morning. To what extent has outsourcing created this supply crunch at the various ports, as far as getting goods to customers?
That is a good question, Chairman, and I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that, but we can certainly research that for you and get back to you.
Has your national federation, obviously some of these things occur at a higher level than Frankfurt, have they taken any position on trying to support legislation to encourage the reshoring of certain industries so that we don't find ourselves dependent on foreign governments?
There is a bill that's, I think, been introduced in Congress. I think it's the Oceans Bill or something that they are supportive of, that they see would alleviate some of these port issues. I'm not familiar with the intimate details of if it includes not outsourcing these pieces, but I'm happy to get back with you. I thought I had it with me, but I don't have it with me.
And you mentioned, I guess, the Retail Federation's opposition to tariffs, but I know some particular industries like steel, we did see somewhat of a resurgence in the American manufacturing capability when those tariffs were placed on foreign steel imports, as well as other what I might call national security industries. What exactly is your opposition to that, considering that some countries like China and even some European countries have dumped cheap, steel that in many ways is government subsidized on the market?
I think that you bring up an excellent point, because our members would have concerns on both sides of that issue. In the example that you gave, we have very great concern about counterfeit products and products that are not safe for consumers and being sold to consumers. At the same time, the ability to sell most economically to consumers is something we have to consider as well. So yes, I think you are correct. We have great concern about products that are of lesser quality or that are counterfeit. That is a huge problem that we face.
I just always think I've got a 1974 television at my house, in my father-in-law's basement, that still turns on and works. But one of the ones you buy at Walmart, you're lucky if it lasts 2 years. It's made in Korea or China. And, I think that, you get what you pay for. And with the rising wages, which I think is a good thing, people do have more buying capacity for higher quality goods. So, but thank you very much for your commentary.
Thank you.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you. And this question may be actually for all of our presenters. And I know Ms. Kirkpatrick was speaking specific to Airbnb and VRBO, but I also know Julie personally, and I know she has a lot of experience with hotels. So I'm just wondering if any of your associations or federations really have anything to offer us as far as immigration goes. And when we come to the staffing issues, if anyone's come out in favor of perhaps expansion on things like H-2B visas and things along those lines to try and help us get back up to full employment.
That is actively something that our association is supporting and pushing federally, absolutely.
Okay. Senator Thomas.
Ms. Stiglitz, I cannot resist asking you this question.
Okay. I knew you would have one.
Because sometimes we agree and, sometimes we disagree. But I'm just trying to bring some common sense to this understanding about taxes. I've got a long day today. I probably won't get home till about 8 o'clock tonight. Okay? My wife's going to be home, and I don't necessarily expect her to cook, but she's going to be hungry. I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to say, well, Vila, let's go out and get something to eat. Okay? Do you really think if there was a local option sales tax and I had to pay 1% on that, I would say, oh, honey, well, we're not going to go out and eat tonight because I got to pay an extra 1% tax on my meal? Is that really going to be a deterrent, Ms. Stiglitz, to people who want to go out to eat and go to a restaurant and have a nice meal?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it is a valid question. We have formerly classed 4th and 5th cities today have up to have a restaurant tax if they so choose. And so I think it is a question of the fact that you're not talking about a tax just on a restaurant and to date, I've not seen it only structured as 1%, and I think the restaurant tax is 3%.
It's up to 3.
Up to 3. And so I think it's a question of, you're talking about a local sales tax that businesses will pay on products that they buy. I think you can look at the last Fox report under the Steve Beshear administration, and it talks about how much businesses pay in sales tax. I think that the consumer, we have to understand the consumer is price sensitive. And so maybe you won't consider not eating out tonight, but maybe you won't get an appetizer, or maybe you won't, fill your basket as much. And so there is a limit to what a consumer can afford. And again, what this question is asking the General Assembly to do is to put to the voters whether or not a constitutional provision should be removed that would allow the General Assembly to give cities the authority to do sales taxes. Again, my concern is we keep talking about how this General Assembly would structure sales taxes, and maybe it's local option, or maybe it's not, or we're going to get rid of income, productivity taxes and those types of things. But what about in the future? What about in 100 years from now? How will that General Assembly know? That is what we as associations have to make a decision based on, and that is why we cannot support a constitutional amendment on that.
Let's see. I have Representative Callaway, then Representative Dodson will be the final question.
Thank you all for coming and presenting today. I appreciate the information. I did have 2 questions. One is, from a restaurant standpoint, are there any particular restaurants that are still implementing their own capacity regulations? Yes. And how is that affecting them? And then my other question would be, from a vaccine mandate standpoint, are we seeing any effect as far as the workforce issues that we have that could be having or potentially would have in the future on businesses as well? Thank you.
On your first question, I think that the capacity limits that are happening are a result of staffing directly. So if you walk into a restaurant and you see a few tables that don't have guests at them, and you're at the hostess stand, you're like, oh, I can sit there. And they say, no, we don't have someone to cover that area. Shannon kind of touched on this. We're seeing a year ago, everybody was being really nice and kind, and we were really going out of our way to help each other get through all this. People have kind of reverted. Not everybody, obviously, but a lot of folks are just fed up with everything, and we're all tired of all this. And so now the person that a year ago would be thanking the hostess and waiting patiently is going and sitting at that table anyway. And so I think that most restaurants aren't putting capacity limits on that for COVID purposes, but more for, and many of them have kept the distancing in place, but a lot of them have had to limit either their capacity or, I've got a full restaurant, so I'm going to turn my online ordering off, or, we can't do both the drive-through and the inside, so we're closing the inside and we're just doing the drive-through. And so I think that is the capacity effect that we've seen play out. On the vaccine mandate front, we haven't seen a lot of restaurant companies mandate vaccines. And so Shannon may know more from a retail perspective of that. But I know that a lot of our restaurants strongly encouraged their staff members to get vaccinated. But most of our restaurants have fewer than 50 employees, and so they've got a smaller staff to kind of deal with.
Yes, and of course the federal law has not, or federal regulation has not gone into effect yet. We still haven't seen its final version. But to my knowledge, I am not aware of a member who has a vaccine mandate. We have lots of members who did incentives, providing paid leave, transportation pay, those different things. But I haven't heard of a member mandating it. I think when it comes to either side of the equation, what they want to do is run their business in the way they see that's best fit. If they so choose to require their employees to get a vaccine, then they want to be able to choose that. If they don't want to choose that path, then they want to be able to choose that as well, or have some sameness if that's the way it's going to be. So that's where our members are today.
Okay. Next we have Representative Dodson, and that'll be the final question. If anybody else has any, please feel free to send them to the committee, and we'll get them to the appropriate presenters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ladies, for coming today and sharing with us both industries you mentioned, both the restaurant and the daycare. It's very near and dear to my heart because I own both. Pre-COVID, I had over 200 employees in 5 restaurants. And, you know, we've seen during the pandemic that the business model changed quite a bit. And what I mean by that is with the extra monies that came in from the government, a lot of people staying home, not having to work, so we had to operate our drive-thrus. And what happened, especially you'll see in the McDonald's, in the upper tier of those who operate drive-thrus, in their business model, we try to keep, you know, a controllable of labor less than 30%. That is a mark that we try to use as operators. And what had happened during COVID, they saw that they became more profitable by just keeping their the drive-thrus open and shutting down the interior. And so a lot of times what we think is short-staffed is not really short-staffed. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that they're more profitable. So therefore, they shut down the dining rooms under the guise of being short-staffed. Now, I'm not negating the fact that there is short-staffed, but it's mostly in the sit-down restaurants. It's mostly in those areas where people serve. But the drive-thrus themselves have been pretty profitable. But what we're seeing now, those where they're short-staffed, they're so short-staffed that one person is getting paid $15 an hour, but they're actually doing 2 people's jobs. Mm-hmm. So the whole business landscape when it comes to the restaurant industry has changed. And I want you to know going forward, if I can help in any way, that I'd like to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you're right. It absolutely has changed. I think that you're going to see more self-directed ordering. I think that's one of the responses that retail and restaurants have had. I think someone reported to me that in one big box retailer here in Frankfurt that they're down to maybe 1 or 2 lanes open. And so I think that, yes, you're right. Profitability, they're going to maximize that. And yes, it's multifaceted.
Some of the numbers I've seen is that the business model on the labor sides went from 28% to somewhere around 15, 16%. So their bottom line is healthy. Mm-hmm. So, you know, a lot of what we see is considered short staff is really not there, especially those upper tier restaurants, drive-thrus.
Thank you, Representative Dotson. That was very informative. Well, I think that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you, presenters, for coming. And the next meeting of this committee will be held on November 18th at 1:00 p.m. So